guess I'll have to fix that later. Oh, wait. Forgot about that. Director, did you have to turn it on so early? Not even done cleaning up the axe. Anyways, as the camera's already on, I'm going to start talking right now. Now, you have already learned about the dangers of these TV shows and stuff, the dangers of these YouTube videos, and a bunch of other stuff. But why are people even creating that? 1, money. 2, their parents. Like, you're like, what? No. How can people's parents influence them to make Cocomelon? Well, I'll tell you why. There's a reason why for those who have children, whenever you're trying to tell them to do something, especially at a very young age, they probably want to do the opposite thing. They just seem like idiots. Why do they seem like idiots? Because we're training them to. What? Okay, yes, we are technically breeding our children to be dumber, stupider, and more susceptible to these poisons and viruses. And I'm not talking about literal for those who are new right now. But I was thinking about something. Maybe the reason why kids are so stupid these days, maybe something about evolution. Let's go knock on Charles Darwin's burial door, I guess, and let's ask him a question. Is it possible that a trait can be given to the next generation when it comes to humans, not because it helps the environment, but that is what the parents are influencing on them? Answer? Yes. I went and read a bunch of papers inside Charles Darwin's book thingy about the theory of evolution. And I realized that basically what he's saying is that anything that the older guys are doing is going to be spread on a physical gene into a physical baby, which then keeps on getting passed on. And I noticed something. How long does it take for human babies to start walking? About a couple months, maybe 1 year, depending on how horrible you are as parents. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. In some cases, 5 years. Some people, it's 37 years. But besides all of that, let's go to the animal kingdom. Let's look at giraffes. They can stand up, walk, forage their own food within 6 hours. And we gotta wait 1 year for that. A bunch of animals, most animals can learn to communicate the moment that they're born. Us? Look, we can't even communicate until we're 2 years old, or 3 years old, or 37 years old, depending. And now let's look at skill traits, basic consciousness. How long does it take for human babies to understand that jumping off a window to get a toy cannon isn't as good for your health than just going down the front steps of the door and picking it up? About 5 years old, according to history. Giraffes, they can walk within 6 hours. They can communicate within a week. They can understand that living is a priority, and they have to study on how to live and how to not die the moment that they're born. It's like an objective. Don't die. If you die, it's not gonna be good. Why? Well, for giraffes, they don't need to ask. It's because dying is usually contributed with meeting with God, which is something that giraffes don't want because they don't want to be shoved with common sense. Babies? if they drop their toy out of the window, they're gonna jump out the window. According to the historical record, that has happened multiple times so far. So really, a giraffe can understand that it wants to live the moment it's born, and the human baby can't understand that jumping out of a window is not a good idea. Why is this happening? Well, remember Charles Darwin's stuff? His book on the theory of evolution says something that he doesn't really point out. It isn't just like survival of the fittest, it's survival of whatever the other guys are doing. Basically, our understanding is that if anybody else is doing it, that's good. That's good. That means that everybody's doing it, which means that all these people are not dying. Which means what they're doing is probably stopping them from, maybe this can actually come to human souls and bodies before they're even born. And then what happens is we get this weird mutation where the babies start overhearing, kind of overhearing. Their soul overhears it, for those who believe in that stuff. But then their bodies are affected by this type of communication from the outside body, and because the brain is wired to send signals down, and because a baby inside a mother's womb is technically an organ that doesn't do anything for the human body except to make more human bodies, what I'm thinking is that those electrical signals launched down from the brain is somehow getting into the baby's mind, or technically the baby's DNA, which is responsible for turning baby DNA into not dying baby DNA. And basically what it does is like make an eye, and then it sends it down to another strain of DNA and says make an eye like this. It gets more and more and more and more complicated and minute the lower it goes, which allows us to see with a retina and an eyeball. But then you have to build the wires up into your brain and build the brain and use the body and all that stuff. So that's basically what these types of genes and DNA are used for. What if these electrical signals are, for some reason, communicating with these genes and telling the body to suppress a couple areas? If you go look at very, very dead and very old people's heads, they're much bigger than our modern day counterparts. Why? Because the brain is slowly getting smaller. A long time ago, it was probably the size of an elephant. Now it's like the size of a crumbled up newspaper. So what happened? Well, obviously the electrical pulses from the brain that was affected by us being like, babies are a bit stupid. And that affects our genes, and then that puts it into our bodies, and that's just how our bodies work. And now it takes 1 year for us to walk, a couple years for us to realize that jumping off a windowsill is very deadly, and even more years to realize that life is a priority, not a little thing that somehow happened in life. And then we're like, oh, it's just CoComelon doing all this stuff. Oh, it's just YouTube doing all this stuff. It's just the Five Fingers who are singing horrible chants in a cult religion thing. It's us. And then we wire ourselves to keep on believing that kids are idiots. And now people are now doing random stuff like using the misconception that children are idiots to make a profit. And now we have CoComelon, and now we have Peter Pig, and a bunch of other stuff. Why? because the electrical pulses in our brains got affected by the fact that we are communicating in the wrong way about children or young people, and that somehow affected the gene stuffs and ended up changing the human body to make us really weak. And also technology has a thing in it, which we will cover next, but give me 1 second. I gotta go kill another Cocomelon monster again. See ya!